of Brooksville's Climate Resilience Committee. Oh,
Close enough.
Close.
Debbie and I
So
appreciate that.
I apologize.
if you can read that,
Okay.
with the exception of don't direct people to that
Right.
email.
So the town of Brooksville, the town of Bucksport's Climate Resilience Committee is now in order, is now started. This meeting will be held in person. It can be viewed on local cable channel 1303 or on the internet by accessing the town website at bucksportmaine.gov, clicking on Watch Meetings. And that, I think, is all I need to say. I thank everyone who's able to be here, and we do have a quorum. And so, I don't see anyone in the room that no one has seen before, so I'm going to bypass the introductions, and we're going to go on to an agenda review. This is a time to look at the proposed agenda and tell me if there are additions or alterations that you'd like to see.
Do you have an
One-
extra copy there, Ralph?
I don't have an extra
Okay.
copy,
Nope,
but take a
there you go,
quick
sir.
look at that and then pass it back to me
Sure.
if you could.
Thank you.
One item that I failed to put on was the review of the notes that Debbie took for us at our last meeting on several weeks ago. And
Thank you.
I would combine that with the, right after the agenda review, I think we should review the minutes of the last meeting. So that's an addition. I forgot to put it on this. Are there any other alterations or changes that anyone would like to see on the agenda?
No.
Seeing none, the agenda is approved, and we move on to a review of the notes of our March 11th meeting that was held here. And I start by thanking Debbie for having taken such extensive notes. And are there comments, corrections, clarifications that anyone has noted on her notes from our last meeting?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes or notes as written. I
Okay.
think they were done very well.
We could do it that way. I sort of go by a consensus process usually in the meetings.
Then I'll
And
withdraw my
if there's no alteration or correction, then I announce that the meetings are
Yep.
approved. If we get to a spot where we want to refer to some kind of motion making, we can do that
Thank you.
as necessary. So the meeting minutes have been accepted, and thank you again, Debbie. Next, we have the service provider opportunity to fill us in on anything that we don't know, that's especially anything that's happened since our last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members, and I guess "don't know" is an operative word here. There's a lot that we don't know coming out of Washington. We know a few things coming out of the state of Maine, and I'll quickly summarize those in my 6 minutes here or less than. We have probably all seen that the Maine Climate Council met about 10 days ago. Cabinet agency heads spoke about what's been impacted in their own particular budgets. The consensus seems to be, the common theme is that they're all waiting for further guidance from Washington on what funding will be available, what's been curtailed, what's been delayed. So I think the best we can do is read the BDN, listen to our own networks, and I have nothing new to really impart about federal funding. There is going to be further briefing up through the beginning of July on the multi-state litigation, of which Maine is a part, to unfreeze the frozen federal funding, the funding that was frozen right after the inauguration of the new president. Again, that's a briefing schedule that will probably take until the beginning of July, and what point the circuit court in Boston makes its final ruling is yet to be determined, and of course that could go to the Supreme Court. Turning to the state of Maine, the funding for the Community Resilience Partnership seems to be secure. There will be enough money, we've been told, for the next grant round. The next grant round will open in May. It's expected to be a very competitive grant round, and I have nothing more to add to that. The date has not been announced, nor have the guidelines for the new program, for the continuation of the program been announced. It was announced at the Maine Climate Council meeting by the person who runs the program that the team is now working on making sure that the eligible activities, the activities eligible for no match local funding, conform to the new recommendations of the Maine Climate Council. Again, that's all I can report at this point. We don't know yet, but I think by this time next month, we will be ready to know or the state will be ready to tell us what the new guidelines will be and what the new grant round funding opportunities will be, what level, what the deadline will be for applications. So that's why tonight's meeting is especially important for really priming this committee to be ready to apply. And that's all I have at this point.
Quick question, you make reference to the new Maine Climate Council recommendations. When were they new? Are we referring to something that I would have seen some months ago?
So when the legislature established the Maine Climate Council in 2019, it set it up so that every 4 years, the council needed to update its recommendations. That was done this past December. And then it's been published. It's called Maine Won't Wait. Again, I guess second version. So that's available on the state's website. And I'll just signal that a couple of the new recommendations have to do with what used to be called trash, then it was called waste management, now it's called material management. It's really an effort to help towns, as I'm sure you are aware, and every town in Maine faces the issue of how to deal with getting rid of waste. We all know that it's a huge issue. So I think we can expect to see some new eligible activities that fall in that category, to be determined.
Okay, are there questions for Alan?
That I can think of.
Well, thank you, Alan. That leads us then to the information updates. At our last meeting, there were a few questions that we were going to try to collect information on, and this would be a time to review that information. I sent some of it by email a couple days ago, but let me ask you, if you don't mind, Alan,
I'm up again.
if you have been able to determine any information from the Governor's Office of Policy and Innovation for the future
Right.
on emergency shelter funding matters related to things like emergency power generation.
Right, I did ask that question. The answer continues to be that any generator that is fueled by fossil fuel is ineligible for no local match funding through this particular program. There may be other sources of opportunity, but because this grant program is so closely tied to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, to creating energy efficiency, and as I say, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, that's why it's not an eligible activity. A PV-powered generator would be eligible. And we've established before that facilities, public facilities that have a public use certainly qualify.
PV?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, photovoltaic. I'm sorry, I didn't
So
use.
that's pretty much solar.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I'm sorry, typically don't speak in acronyms.
Were you able to determine if GOPIF had funded any other emergency power systems in other communities?
The answer was only, they don't fund fossil fuel. I mean, so that's,
Yeah.
you're asking if photovoltaic generators have been funded before? Or biomass?
Yes.
I think we were asking if there were any other agencies that have stood up I think this is what created a emergency, center using any type of green, you know, I guess PV, because I don't think we knew the acronym at that point. Were you able to find any information on that, or did you?
Well, I didn't understand the question exactly that way. I thought the question was, were there facilities, could you fund a facility through this program with a generator? And the answer is yes, if it is not fossil fuel generated.
So,
Well, that information is, I mean, I did ask about the biofuels, which is not fossil fueled, and was told that that was not eligible
Right.
as well. And I guess we were looking to see if there were examples of funded emergency power systems that they had funded, rather than just what's not eligible, what in the past had been eligible. Was my thought. If we don't have any further information on that, we can move on.
I have, so a couple things that I did, and I didn't get PV, I reached out to, I just was like researching green, you know, like biofuels. And I contacted a few businesses, and I'm still waiting. Someone actually left me a message over the weekend, and I should have, but to be honest with you, until this moment, I just realized I heard it because I had that event going on. But I was just trying to find out what the expenses were, and I think I even talked about to some of, maybe here, if it was a mobile, you know, portable, you know, that's something that we could utilize anywhere. So if it was, that's what I was looking for, you know, whether it was a generator, whether it's solar or PV.
Or maybe electric vehicle.
Or at some, but well, so the whole idea, if it's electric and we're out of power, then we can't, you know, so that's why we want a generator, because if the power goes down, we're not gonna have electricity. So, you know, it's run by, you know, whether it's done by solar or some other type of fuels, I don't know, but that might be an option, you know, whether, so that we're not, I know we were looking at using the church for the emergency shelter, but this would be actually open to use it anywhere, and for the town itself for all different resources and reasons. And I looked up warming, cooling operation centers, you know, and what the requirements are. So I did have that, so I can share that with everybody, just so if we went that direction, it's kind of a guide, which the town probably has already, but I did find, you know, some examples that we can maybe put together. It's not necessarily utilizing, it's utilizing a generator, but not necessarily what we're.
If you could, if you have that information in a way that you could email to us.
I will.
Or email it at least to me, and I can distribute it
Yes.
further. That would be helpful. And yes, Stephen.
Okay, it's called Vehicle to Grid, and you can power a house or a commercial building, a small scale, like the church, for 3 days, like the Ford Lightning Pro or Chevy Silverado work truck. They're getting lower in cost, so like the used Ford Lightning Pros at a dealership in New Hampshire, they're selling them for $39,000. You can use the outlets and stuff like that, and you can monitor the power usage as you're using it to generate power and stuff like that. So if we want to look at vehicle to grid options to power, you can also get a generator to hook into that truck and then into the building itself, and it would feed into the building itself, and it would sufficiently power everything in the church itself. So if you want me to reach out to any dealerships locally or out of state to get, you know, the information and stuff like that, and I can put together an email and I can share it with everybody.
I mean, so I think what I heard you saying is that a vehicle can actually power a whole building,
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
And that, you know, that's really interesting. I mean, provide the information. The thing is that when you're talking about a warming shelter or an emergency shelter, there are guidelines that have to be met by government, by public, emergency management, so you have to have certain things. It may meet that, so that's
Yep.
pretty interesting.
So the good thing is, I'm sorry.
Don't interrupt.
Were you finished?
Well, I was just gonna say, if it's a vehicle, it could be utilized for all different, but
Exactly.
I think the best thing to do is just provide the information. I think it's kind of off on a different maybe thought process of what we were thinking about doing, but maybe there's something that we're just, it's an opportunity to learn something more for maybe another.
If you wanted to power let's say the power wasn't turned on yet for the Bay Festival, right? They could hook right into that, and they can have some of the vendors run off the truck battery. And we have plenty of charging stations in Bucksport. So what I'm thinking is if the waterfront crew has to charge their electric trimmers and stuff like that, they can plug right into that. They can go on the waterfront with that truck itself. And if they need to use it for storm-related stuff, they could bring it down to the church, hook up into that power source and power their place as well. And, there's a whole boundless way of powering everything. So
let me continue with a information update here, and then we'll get to a discussion spot.
Okay.
The duration of the power needed for the building was a question that Rich asked of Public Safety, and
Yeah, I saw
the
that.
perfunctory answer was 24/7, which is understandable as an answer, except that it doesn't actually give us any further guidance on what to do with the duration. That the size of the battery determines how long it can have us
So that's,
power output.
yeah, I think I gave a big number, depending on the size, of the building or what, it could just even be an area, but if it's gonna be a warming area, cause that's what it probably would be here, right? If there's power out, if people need to go somewhere and have, someplace warm to be. That's why I was thinking, if it was a mobile generator, it could be an option where we could set up anywhere, even if it's here, an option. Go ahead.
So I spoke with Pastor Remick. Director Gagan had said that Pastor Remick had an electrician come and take a look at what would be needed. And it's my understanding that these requirements would not be met by anything that is mobile. But he's looking up the information. He didn't have it on him for what the actual load would be, would need to be. And we would definitely need that to figure out the size and the price. You can jump many tens of thousands of dollars in between each size. But yeah, so he's looking up that information. They're not opposed to the idea of doing a renewable energy generator. I wanted to make sure, because none of us had really talked to them in quite a while, and I wanted to make sure that they weren't opposed to this whole idea, because it is ultimately their project. They're the ones creating the shelter. We're just in it for the generator.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure. And they're not opposed. So he's looking up that information.
Good.
I just have a point of clarification. I don't know if this is the time.
Ask.
It's actually the town's project because the grant is not eligible if it's the church's project.
That's what I was just
Yes,
thinking.
I just meant the two of them are the ones ultimately
space.
coordinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I just want to be careful that we don't go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah,
that makes us ineligible.
Yeah, because I was thinking the same thing, Tracy, and it's interesting, that point that you're making, because it's a collaboration. They're letting us utilize the church, but we're supplying it, so there would have to be agreements in place that if, let's say it's a Sunday and this occurred, that, they would have to maybe forego services, and there's different things that would have to happen. And so I don't know if those discussions were had with, the church because, you know, you're just like the school, right? You don't wanna shut down the school. Most shelters are in schools and churches too. But those are the agreements we would have to have in place with them. And I'll forward this warm and cooling operations guide. I was looking to see if it had any information on generator. It says, you know, to have it, but it doesn't give you the parameters and I could, you know, look some more and,
Oh, good, I look forward to looking at that.
yeah.
So I did email to you 4 pages of information, which included on page 3 some information about battery storage systems, and there are companies that work with very large systems, and there are this suggestion of a way in which the town might be able to provide some types of emergency power services if the town were to purchase an electric vehicle that could be used as a portable emergency power for at least the size that it's able to provide. Rather than going into a lot of too far into the weeds on the detail, I know that the church is a 3-phase powered building, and there are 2 appliances in the building that require 3-phase power. And typically things that are the vehicle to grid power systems are single-phase power, and that requires a different set of equipment to transfer from the single-phase power to the 3-phase power. And quite
Portable
frankly,
generators would be a similar concern.
yeah, so there's a variety of technical details that we could go into, but I don't think we're there yet, and I'd like to move on if we could. I just want to make reference to having put some information in the packet that I sent you on biofuels, what they are, where they come from, where they're available. That doesn't seem to be an option for us with respect to this, what we've been discussing on account of the policies of the governor's office there. But and then I also put some information in here on the Emerald Ash Borer. I don't know if there's additional information that Suzanne or Chris would like to bring to us about the Emerald Ash Borer. You had some comments last time.
It's here. It's here now. It's no longer, since the last time we met, it's now in, I believe, Acadia.
That's right. I have the map.
It's reflected on the map.
Yeah, the map was
That's really helpful. Thank you
last
for
week,
saying
and that includes the Mount Desert Island infestation that was discovered since our last meeting.
How are they discovering it? Are they looking for live species or tree symptoms?
Well, I think both. I think that, so they bore into the trees, and so to be honest, I'm not an expert on it, but, I mean, Chris, maybe you know how they find it?
Tree death, the Emerald Ash Borer has a D-shaped bore, whereas the domestic ash borers have a circle bore. But what they do is they do test trees out in which they strip the bark away, and then draws the borer in when it sees this weakened tree. But they're here, and they're gonna be here for a long time. It's just it's gonna be difficult, I think, to come up with a plan to save some. I don't know how that'll work. But.
Well, we worked on a plan to provide to the council.
Yes.
And we're finishing that up, and
By we, you mean the Conservation Committee?
the Conservation Committee, actually Emily's on the committee, and so we all had a administrative working meeting, and we just kind of put the plan together to present with, to present to the town so that they can make a plan, like use it and have, how they're gonna deal with it. Because even when we did this plan, which was at the beginning of the month, I think, we still didn't have the Emerald Ash Borer here. And now because there are restrictions, you can't, there's a whole bunch of parameters that happen once they're found in the area. So, but the other option for this grant was that maybe use the funding to help with the, you know, the town deal with it, because they're gonna have to deal with it.
And on that point, I'm wondering if the Conservation Committee discussed any specific things that would cost money, that, and in other words, what I'm looking for is how would monies be used, were they applied for, and if they were granted to us, what would they be, what would the town do with that money that's useful in dealing with this problem?
An inventory
Inventory.
of the trees, and I'm still working on figuring out what that could cost us. I have people waiting for people to get back to me. University of Maine got back to me, and they didn't really have any thoughts or what students who helped out with inventories previously were paid or nothing. So now I'm waiting for the city of Bangor to get back to me because they utilized this program at UMaine to help. However, it looks like these students weren't doing this on their own. They're doing it under a forester. The city of Bangor has a forester. So, and that was kind of one of my questions with them, like, could we hire one of them to save money and they do it on their own? And I'm not so sure of that anymore. So I am also looking into, there's a large list of foresters in the area for hire. They swear a specific oath for sustainability and all this stuff. And trying to figure out what do they cost. And the contacts in Bangor, I'm hoping they can tell me how much they paid for an intern from the University of Maine. But the other thing is Bangor is significantly larger. So I have to figure out, well, how many acres did they inventory? How many hours did that take? And because the pay is going to be hourly, and how that can translate. I've got how many acres we have. So there's some math and waiting for people to get back to me.
Question for Emily.
Sure.
Does it feel like that there's actually a field of profession that could do that part, assess what we actually need in Bucksport as a plan?
It seems like the forester is
So there's
a
no sort of
forester.
specialized sort of group that's sort of in, that can do like a, you know how we have like forest management plans and things like that. Are there any sort of pre-existing, like did Bangor have a pre-existing?
So what's interesting, so this is in the state, so there are other communities that have done this. So that's why actually Great Pond, and Chris, I think you're very involved with Great Pond, or you have a connection.
Yes.
So Great Pond is very involved in this right now. And so that might be a resource.
I reached out to them as well
Yeah.
to figure out like who they hired to do it, and a recommendation could be good as well. I think they hired a forester.
I don't think they hired anybody. I think it was
No.
Jennifer Riefler and a couple others did it, but they do have a contracted forester. But it's been a long haul for them because 10 years ago, I was begging them to start. So they waited, but now they're doing it. And I think the important thing is, for me, as far as the town of Bucksport goes, is we don't have to identify every ash tree in the properties of the town of Bucksport. For me, it's what's the most dangerous should they die and come down. It's a safety issue for me. And my biggest problem I mentioned before is up at Miles Lane. Miles Lane's basically it's a wet-footed bog in many areas that has been filled in with trails, which is great. There's a lot of ash up on Miles Lane. And if the ash dies and starts coming down on the trails, you're gonna have to shut your trails down and clean it up. But my main thing when I started this was the town needs to understand they've got a potential huge expense coming at them. The sooner they plan, which is what we've been doing, the conservation group, the sooner they plan. That outline was provided by the Maine Forest Service, I guess, the original outline.
And
That
that's
came-
what you're bringing to council?
Yeah,
Yeah, so we
we've
just
been taking
modified
that
it.
outline and adjusted it, shall we say,
Right.
to how it may be relevant to Bucksport.
Bucksport.
And hopefully they'll understand they have an expense coming.
Yeah.
And some towns will budget $120,000 and ends up being $180,000.
Yeah.
It always seems to be much more expensive because it's not just towns that are trying to deal with this, but private citizens. And then you get into that issue, there's a whole raft of issues there too. So the expense goes up the minute it hits town, the expense for removing trees.
So, can I, sorry.
I'm all set.
Apologies. So, like, so I'll give an example, and I'm kicking you too.
That's fine, you
I
can
like to
kick away.
twirl them and cross my legs. So let's just say the assessment is one cost. And I think it should probably be a professional of some level, you know, or a group of the students who can do this. And maybe in the plan is to, you know, outline the areas that the town needs to address. But also there's other costs, just so we understand costs. So let's just say they want to take down certain ones, or they might want to treat, because they treat a certain like a perimeter around, and that's part of this, is so that if they treat certain trees, then it prevents the emerald ash borer from coming in. So that's an expense, you know, if they do a certain amount of treatment of trees, and let's say that's $300 a tree. So it's really that identity of assessing the trees is really important, because we need to know how many, what areas are affected, outline the areas, and, you know, that the town is going to you know, mark as, you know, and then also have an option for the town necessarily isn't going to pay for private citizens, but to make sure things are available for them and that they have information, and so those are some of the resources. But
So like three things: assessment, mitigation, and education.
that's it. Perfect.
Got
Yeah.
it. That's,
But-
I like to compartmentalize,
Yes,
like how we're gonna get
yes.
from A to B here.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
So the plan is pretty much that way, but
Yeah.
but it is something that just in the past 2 weeks it's changed. So we were going from it could happen, now it's here.
The problem too is ash trees will grow anywhere that's wet. And if you look at among all the buildings here in town, there are a lot of ash trees in amongst buildings that have never were planted there, they just grew up from whatever reason. Those belong to private citizens, many of those. They're gonna, when those die, those citizens have a problem, and I'm wondering if they'll be reaching out to the town for solutions that it could be 5 or 10 years down the road. But I think the most important thing is just be ready and do the best you can at preparing, because I'm not sure, the town may decide to do an inventory of private lands. That could get really expensive, but at least do an inventory of your town-owned properties. And when I did a tax search of town-owned properties, I was amazed at how many properties the town owns. Small, big, you know, all kinds of sizes. I don't know if you've checked them, Emily, it's just
Yeah, they gave
amazing.
me a whole list
Yeah,
of
just amazing.
different, sorted by different zones,
Yep.
different properties, the size, like every detail we could possibly need to figure out where we need to go
Yeah.
to
It's
inventory.
gonna be a challenge.
So, yes.
Just one more component of it, and that's why I feel like the assessment phase is really crucial. We get the correct type of professional, because we also want to be sure that we're not like bringing more of the species in somehow. So like the whole process will have to include some sort of.
Well, they would identify what ash trees are, and the so they're these would be a subject matter expert on this that would
that's what I
come,
meant. You found my words.
and subject matter expert that would come in and make an assessment, and it can't just, you know, be on a map, you know, whether we to mark the map or whether there's, you know, some sort of document, so that way we have a true assessment. It can't, and you know, the town relies a lot on volunteers, but this is something that it's not a volunteer on, you know, solely I mean, we're all volunteers.
Yeah,
But it has to be done by, I think, a professional.
that's kind of where I'm getting at. Like just to do it right, a subject
Yeah.
matter expert would be sort of due diligence in a way.
The question that I have that I think we need to stay somewhat focused on is, if we were to write a grant under the
Emerald ash borer.
climate resiliency program, it's been suggested to us, I think a good suggestion, that it's a place to start is with a budget. and figure out what the money would be used for and how much money is needed and how that would work, and then build a grant application around that. And so I think it's worth keeping our minds focused on what would we use the money for, knowing roughly what the amounts of money are that might be available through this grant program and how that would interface with other sources of funds.
I agree, and I feel like it's sort of low-hanging fruit almost feels like the assessment phase. If the mitigation phase is as expensive as you're saying, it's well beyond the parameters of the grant, but the assessment phase, I can't recall exactly, Emily, the one you referred to, that somebody's done it before through this grant program, but it feels like to piece it out between, I mean, we can't do much without the assessment, which I think would be probably fairly expensive.
I don't know how expensive.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to figure out.
So much.
I have a few contacts that need to get back to me to figure out, and some of it's math as well, comparing properties, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we talk to, I think one of the things which Emily's doing is reaching out to other towns and cities around our area, or even I don't know how Great Pond, you said that maybe they're doing it, and I'll be honest, I had a discussion with someone yesterday, and they gave me a bunch of information, and they're going to send it to me, but I don't want to say, because I don't want to
100% sure on what it was when it comes to funding and how they're working through this assessment themselves, but they're actively, Great Pond is actively doing, and I'll send you the information that I'm getting if I.
Seems like a grant proposal could be compartmentalized, Ralph, into 3 budget sections and sort of pick whatever aligns with once we have more numbers.
Yeah.
It could be that we apply for assessment and education and look for
Yeah.
other funds for mitigation, or we just
Yeah.
apply for mitigation. Yeah.
Right. No, I understand that. I think yes, Alan.
So I appreciate this conversation, and I'm looking at our list of eligible activities, and I think that to the point of first doing an assessment, I think an assessment could be funded along with a pilot education project, sort of proof of concept, not total mitigation, but what are the things that could be proven to work on a pilot basis. So I'm looking at here E4, which is to develop a natural resource and habitat inventory that includes climate stressors and impacts. So that would be E4. That's the assessment phase. And then H, here is H. 2, create a climate change education, outreach, and engagement program focusing on mitigation and adaptation for residents and businesses.
Built for this.
Yeah. So I think, as you were suggesting, at least a 2-phase, maybe a 3-phase budget would make sense for the assessment. A mini project for proof of concept, and then a list of recommendations for seeking follow-on grant funding as it becomes available for the sort of larger mitigation. That's my suggestion.
Okay, and I guess one of the things that we also have to keep in mind is how we explain what the population is that we're serving, who's being served by the grant funds, being used in the way in which we propose to use them. So I think that, if I recall from our previous discussion, that's an important piece of the application process, would be the identification of who's being served and et cetera. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's exactly, I'm glad you made that point. And you, Suzanne and Chris, probably have more of it than Emily, have a sense of what the community benefit is on that. And that would be a very important piece to include. And I'm assuming that this promotes tree health in general, that lowers greenhouse gas emissions, it provides the cooling benefit of tree canopy. There may be other things. That's not my expertise, it is yours, so.
Go ahead, Em.
My homework was to look into the list, to see what might fit with either project. And just kind of going along with what you had said for the two that it could fit, those really were kind of it. It wasn't, there's one other that may help with fixing the problem, but it seemed kind of loose. Like, I think what we're looking at is the grant could potentially cover an inventory and education, but not dealing with the issue, is what it kind of seems like. The closest thing was E6, which was preserve climate threatened natural areas, but it's, I don't know, it just, such as wetlands, riparian areas, and headwater streams through zoning or other regulations, and that didn't really seem quite to fit dealing with the issues. But based off of, I wouldn't be surprised if the grant were only able to cover inventory anyway.
That's what I was thinking
So.
too.
Well, because we
Okay,
don't really know, because we don't know, well, you said there's a lot of trees, but yes, I mean, we don't really know the numbers. I mean, we're
Right.
kind of just making assumptions. But I'll read a little excerpt from our plan, or the purpose of it. So by implementing the provisions in this management plan, the town of Bucksport is attempting to mitigate the disruption to the town caused by the pending infestation of the emerald ash borer. Taking a proactive approach to this invasive invasion will enable the town to address public and private needs in an efficient and effective way. So that kind of, to answer the question, I think someone asked, like, how will this, like, what's the population? How is this? I mean, it's the town. We have a population, but it's, it's throughout, and it's also the emerald ash borer, because of what it's doing. It also it impacts the lumber industry. Like, you can't, I mean, I think now, like, you can't just take a tree down and you have to get rid of it in a certain way, because they can't like ship it across lines, they can't take it because of the infestation problem. So it has a bigger impact on the environment as a whole.
So, just a second, what we're moving into here is identification of our next which include what questions do we want to pursue further, what answers do we want to pursue, what questions do we have? And that's certainly in the realm here of what does a licensed forester, what are they able to do, what services are available, and those sorts of things. But Alan, you have a
Thank you.
comment.
Suzanne, you talking, and Chris, you presaged this earlier, talking about what to do with the dead trees. And if the Maine Climate Council is now talking about material management, waste, debris removal, maybe, I can't promise, but maybe the list will expand to include something like getting rid of infested vegetation.
Yeah.
And if it is, then that becomes another,
Like in a different round.
So we're just like kind of stacking our,
yes, stacking the needs
Yeah.
and matching them to the,
So the three-phase budget goes with grant one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still ready for phase
right.
two of
Mhm.
the budget. So I like that.
And my recommendation, knowing, because I've been through the scoring process for these applications before, budget will be very important, but also, as the chair mentioned, who is being served and who is benefited by all of that, and that needs to be a really compelling argument. So, and I haven't, that's something, I haven't heard it yet, but I think, what you've written is good, but it doesn't quantify it in a way that I think would pass muster, having been through this before.
I wonder though if the subject expert will give us some insight on some of that. I think we are missing the subject expert
We
who
are.
can sort of talk about the implication of such an infestation on communities. They would have experience on this. That's why I feel like that's the missing piece.
Right, and the economy, there's an economic downside to this. If
There's a decision that each town has to make, I think, and that decision is how extensive do they want this program to be? You want it just on town property, or do you want it on all properties in your town? Because if you don't do all properties, sooner or later those folks will be knocking on your door because they can't afford it.
It's like the brown tail moth.
Yeah.
I did my house,
Yeah.
Reach School has it.
Yeah.
Like, nope,
Yeah.
like a big waste of money.
That's, it gets expensive,
Yeah.
but
I get it.
that's the problem, and each town has to make that decision. Sooner or later, the people start knocking on your door anyhow, even if you don't wanna serve the citizens. Because the citizens have, in my example, and it has nothing to do, my example is I've contacted a forester because I have about 10 acres of very mature ash trees that I'm about to lose. And I wanted it cut down this year. And there isn't a cutter out there that'll do it because they want all the other oak. They want massive amounts of trees. They're not gonna come in and just cut even 10 acres. They need volume. And I said, I'll let them die. They're all gonna die. So that's one dynamic of the financial end of it, because but the problem is that once it hits and all your cutters and all your tree trimmers are all in business to make money, they're gonna be pressured. Everybody wants them to come, and all of a sudden the prices start climbing.
Well, you know,
And that's why I'm hoping to get to it sooner than later. I'm sorry.
no, it's me, I tend to do that. What's interesting are these are options, it's not in the plan, but let's just say because we do an assessment and it's identified, the town may, hire a town arborist. We don't have a town arborist. And that might be where instead of going in and they can address whether the public and there could be people who, just saying in a plan in the future, it could be where people submit for, who have a bigger problem on their property and they can submit to the town and utilize resources that the town has. If they're paying a salary of one or two people over the course of a period of time, it's different than saying, okay, we need $180,000 right now. But if we had the resources within our own town and it's a problem that's gonna last for years, that might be something that the town looks into, is just, hiring someone, having a team that can go out and address this without having to bring in outside, people to do it. So do you know what I mean? Like those are ways that the town can mitigate this in the future, which would be if as our grant would do the assessment, would do the education, and then we offer the plan to say, hey, the town might say it might be beneficial for us to do it.
So let me focus everyone's attention on the question of what information do we want to collect for our next meeting? Who wants to take on which tasks and what our next meeting date ought to be?
Can I suggest a process for that?
Sure.
I was thinking of three things, and I think that you really are far ahead on this, maybe farther than you think. So I think the three things that would really cue up your agenda item there, Mr. Chair, are continuing the research, Emily, that you've done, hoping getting information back from Bangor, finding out what a forester does, what the cost is, what are those costs per person, per hour, per contract costs. I think that's number one. Number two is finding out exactly what how a forester would quantify the benefit to the community, really making the case for, as the chair said, who does it benefit, how, and to what degree. And then the third piece would be to really develop then the budget for this. And I think if you had those three things at the next meeting, you as a committee would be well primed to, if this is the direction you want to go, you'd be well primed to be ready for an application.
That's good. I think, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
Well, I'm looking at the clock and we're
Yes.
running short on time, so I don't mean to cut anybody off. But what I'm looking for at the moment is what additional pieces of information are we looking to collect in preparation for our next meeting and when we will have that next meeting on both general topics and if any committee members feel there's any additional topics beyond the two that we've been discussing of battery emergency power, Emerald Ash Borer response, and if any members have other ideas of other potential projects, I don't want to curtail at least airing those. Mindful of the time, we have about 10 minutes left. I'd like to see if we can identify and we've begun to identify what are the capabilities of a forester relative to inventory work. And as Alan brings up, who is it and how do they calculate the community benefit of the work that is done by having that inventory? And on the battery matter, there's some information, technical details needed relative to the church building. Some technical details related to the availability of battery systems. Are there other questions that the committee knows of that we want to be pursuing answers to?
I would.
Go ahead.
I think it's important before we, or at the same time as the battery piece with the generator, that we refer to what you were talking about, that guide of
I just sent it to him.
cooling and warming, because there's a box of regulation we have to adhere to as well with these types of, I mean, an electrician going to the church and assessing what we would need to keep the building sparked up is a little bit different than assessing the building for an emergency operation, warming and cooling as far as regulation goes. And that's all I would want to be sure we understood that. I don't know how to get that. You know what I mean? Like a home Generac generator, you could sort of assume what that would be for the church, but is it, my understanding is that there's a separate set of requirements when it's an emergency shelter or cooling center for generated power. And again, a subject expert on that particular piece would be helpful too, because I don't know. And maybe there aren't. I mean, it would be simple as I could call Andrew Sankey and ask him again, like, what's going on with main emergency management as far as warming cooling centers? I could find out if there's a regulatory body on what type of.
I sent the document, which I pulled from to you, so that it was for hold on. It is
I'll be sure that we all get a copy
Yeah.
of that.
it's a warming cooling center operation guide. So I don't reinvent the wheel, and this I believe is from, if it wasn't from Maine, it is Maine, so it's Maine guidelines.
Excellent.
So
Perfect.
everything is there, we can look at that, and with these, I mean, I think we need one here in the town. If we don't have one, I don't know how often these things happen, but there should be a plan. Usually the fire department or one of the public safety departments has something, and I think somebody said that they spoke with them and they said 24, that anything that's running has to be able to meet certain guidelines of 24/7. But there's other things within the center that you have to have, or in the emergency.
Yeah.
So
I know 24/7 seems vague, but I think it's actually really important because a lot of renewable options have a time limit.
Well, every option has a
And-
time limit.
Well, yes, but not a refillable time limit. Like part of the reason most people still use fossil fuel generators is because you can refill it. And solar, it's
Solar.
replenishing itself.
Exactly.
So I think that 24/7 is kind of important. Like a battery will, when that runs out, how are you going to recharge it?
you have to have extra batteries.
Right, and that's what I'm getting at. I think that the options we explore need to be able to be continually 24/7.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, if you did go for the mobile power supply, why not have an EV charger at the church? You know, but it would also, you know, connect to the generator and the solar and stuff like that, and actually power that battery.
So it's taking the resource, so that can, maybe you could put that, I understand what you're saying, in
Yeah.
other words.
I'm trying to
It's
figure
it's
that.
like a circle,
So yeah,
it's
it's like
circular. So
yeah, it's a redundant power source. So yeah,
It's
I'm
just, it has to be, just so you understand, like, it has to be a very stable
Right.
You know, when you're telling people to come to a shelter because we're gonna
Yep.
keep you safe and warm.
Yep.
It can't just be like hit or miss kind of thing.
Right.
No, I
Okay,
mean,
so let me interrupt because we've only got 5 minutes
Yeah.
left and
Okay.
actually, Don,
Are we clear, Alan, are we clear that there is no negotiation with the state relative to a fossil fuel generator? That this must be a green generator?
You are- You are correct. It's non-negotiable.
It's non-negotiable, thank you. Are we clear that there are no other alternatives to a generator other than battery capacity? Are there any other generators that could be run on some kind of total solar power kind of situation? Do we know that?
well.
What I can tell, solar
No,
is the primary.
Primary,
There
yeah,
are other options, sure.
Like wind?
there are,
A fuel cell that's powered with hydrogen that's electrolyzed from some renewable resource and stored in a tank. I mean, there are
Yeah.
many other options. I think what was interesting to me about the truck idea only was that an emergency generator that sits outside a building. I have a couple neighbors that have emergency generators
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
run for 20 minutes every week, and that's all it does. Whereas a truck can be utilized for a variety of things around town, and then when an emergency happens, it's used to provide that. So that's what was attracting me to in that direction. But yeah, there are other options, and we could look at them, and I'm happy to go further into that.
Would you like me to possibly talk to some of my connections and see if I can get a price? If I can have some of the people that sell these vehicles, maybe they can come and do a Zoom call.
Mr. Chair, the grant wouldn't be eligible if we used a truck for other projects in town. It would only be eligible for the shelter.
Oh, really?
Well, so let me make a quick comment here, which is, yes, we're trying to identify what we can use specific grant monies for,
Yeah.
and I don't mean to derail that, but at the same time, if we come up with a suggestion for the town that's helpful to the town, that relates to what we've been discussing, I think that's, I wouldn't want to cut off the value that this committee can provide to the town, irrespective of whether we can apply for the grant and if we can apply for a grant, we are in no assurance of being awarded the grant.
I think I understand. So in other words, make the recommendation because it's a truck, so a truck could be used for whatever, and then it
Right.
could be used for.
So,
Power generation.
with only a couple minutes left, I'd like to quickly switch to what I call a meeting evaluation. The meeting evaluation serves the purpose of improving the ways in which we're effective in our meetings. What it is the time for anyone to comment on what parts of this meeting have worked well, what parts have not worked so well. It not only provides guidance to the chair for facilitating the next meeting, but it also provides information to all of us on how we interact as a group to have a meeting. So very quickly, are there comments either of what's worked well or what could be improved on how this meeting is run?
Open dialogue. We've got great open dialogue, and no idea is secondary. You guys listen to what I have to say, and so.
Other commentary on what's worked well with this meeting, what?
For me, this is a new concept. For all my years of going to various meetings in my profession, I've never run into this, so I'm not prepared to have that discussion at this time, but I will be in the next meeting.
Good response.
But, it's the truth.
Any other comments on how this meeting has been run or?
Yeah,
what could be
I
improved?
appreciate the agenda streamlining, and just because we're in our second iteration of this committee trying to pump out some work. And so it's nice to be streamlined and stay focused on the grant and parameters and what we need. I appreciate that part of it.
Next meeting date, are we gonna set that tonight? I don't know if we can.
I think we will have to do that by email.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.
I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna eat tons of birthday cake.